Good evening. It is special and beautiful. I always say that, but to see you all here this evening, I don't know, I'm overwhelmed and I had words I was going to say, but I'm going to go off the heart. It's a special day for you all to be here. As you know, it is Miss Lucille's birthday, and to bring it in or to celebrate it with you all feels really meaningful, and I think fulfills a vision that both Mr. Fred and Miss Lucille and the Cliftons, I think, held in their chests for such a long time. I didn't introduce myself. My name is Joel Diaz. I am the Director of Programs at the Clifton House. And sort of, as I mentioned, we're gathered here to celebrate Miss Lucille's birthday. It would have been her 88th birthday, if I'm not mistaken. And, you know, we're here to celebrate Thelma, Lucille, Sales, Clifton. It feels important to note a few things before I sort of go into my remarks. But we are blessed with a few of her extended family and descendants, and so I just want to point them out. So the Jarrett family is here from Buffalo, New York, and we just appreciate you for being here. Thank you for making the drive and mean the world. And then before I continue my remarks, I just want to call to the podium both Alexia and Gillian to share a few words about Miss Lucille before I get into my spiel. But yeah, come on up.
Wow. Yeah. So if you could understand the feeling of having grown up in this house with parents who filled it with love and with the idea that everyone should feel safe and like they can be their true, authentic self, and however you express your art is pure and wonderful and accepted. And then to see this room filled with what we fill it with, I can't explain to you just how touching and moved we are to see that. I thank you all so much for helping us continue the legacy. My sister and I took a picture on the front steps to reenact a picture that there is of us when I'm 4 and she's 6, and we look like high waters, hair, all the stuff you would think, but just that's the same idea that we still have for each other. We obviously, our family is very close, and just for this house. So it was our sister Sydney who couldn't be here tonight's vision. I always want to make a special shout out to her because we love her so much, and she's the reason we're here. But I just thank everybody so much for being a part of this with us.
Yes. And basically, I echo what you said, but also again thinking that because today is Mommy's birthday, and just thank you in terms of the support you have, the love that we feel from you for her. And every time I come into this house, I still feel that same sort of security and safety and fun that we had in the house, and the wonderment that she had for life and that she transferred to us. And on her birthday again, I'm just thrilled that our family's here. My cousin and the rest of her family are here today because she was so much about family in all the ways that it comes, and in celebrating that. So thank you so much from all of our family to you, and happy birthday to Mom.
A couple of things to note. One, Red Emma's local bookstore is selling copies of How to Carry Water and the Black Maria. One was edited by Aracelis and one was written by Aracelis. I recommend or encourage you to buy copies of the books. We'll have a book signing at the end of this, but make sure you make your way to the table and support a local bookstore. Also, as a way to celebrate Miss Lucille, I'm inviting you all, if you have a favorite poem, to read it. We're going to record it. It'll be posted on our social media. Your face won't be on there, but it'll be your voice as a way to signify how far Miss Lucille reaches. So we welcome you to sort of read your favorite poem. You don't have to, but you're more than welcome. As sort of Gillian and Alexia mentioned, this house was at once and at present the home of Lucille and Fred Clifton and their 6 children. In 1980, the home was lost to foreclosure, and so began the wind spanning its 40 years, lifting and carrying the dandelion seed of their hearts until the wind settled. And along its path, it left a garden, each one leading back to this home. In 2019, Sydney Clifton, with her eye, heart, and horizon of a vision, reacquired the home, and like the dandelion seed, she is a parachute holding the air for safe landing. And in this way, too, she is a lung extending the breath of our becoming. And so the Clifton House is a sanctuary to nurture the artist and activist in all of us. In thinking of who to inaugurate this lecture, only one name sort of returned in the echo of Miss Lucille, and that was sort of saying, aracelis, girmay. And in this, and with this insistence, I bow to that listening, head to ground in reverence and gratitude, knowing that the long memory of Miss Lucille blooms in the violet language of aracelis. I mentioned this to you already, and Janae, I think there's a door. Okay, I think someone's getting it. You're good. Aracelis, in my opinion, is the embodiment of poetry. And I think I say that over and over again when I speak of her, whether sort of in this public setting or not. I think she lives the world as a poem. And for me, it's the most beautiful thing to witness. You have tended and celebrated the work of Miss Lucille, offering us how to carry water. Your violet language is the light to the light that illuminates the spirit in all of us, the people, the many, the varied. You have the gift to see and love the human in all of us. Your voice and writing, like Miss Lucille Clifton's, is mighty and tender, vast and voluminous. You carry the wind in your words, and with it the particles that contain our possibilities and befores. So I'm so grateful that you are here doing this for us today. I'll read formally her bio. Aracelis Girmay is a poet and editor who makes work across genres, including essays, collage, and picture books. And by the way, that's another reason why I said you should come. She has two beautiful children's books. One's Changing, That Holds My Heart. It's what I go to when I'm sad and need uplifting. And so if you haven't gotten her children's books, please do so. She is the author of 3 books of poems for which she was a finalist for the Neustadt International Prize for Literature. Her most recent full-length collection, The Black Maria, is a Black Maria. Her most recent publication is a chapbook and was a flower made in collaboration with book artist Valentina Améstica. Did I say that right? I might have mispronounced that. Other recent work has been published in Astra, the Paris Review Online, and e-flux. Girmay is on the editorial board of the African Poetry Book Fund and is the editor-at-large of the Blessing the Boat Selections, a poetry series founded by publisher of BOA Editions and named after Lucille Clifton's cherished poem. Girmay is also the editor of So We Can Know, Writers of Color on Pregnancy, Loss, Abortion, and Birth. Girmay is the editor of How to Carry Water, it's like the Poems of Lucille Clifton. In 2018, she was chosen by the poet Elizabeth Alexander to receive the Lucille Clifton Legacy Award. So without further ado, I introduce the one day.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Wow. It's an honor. I was saying to someone, I was like, I might faint, which is a feeling I have sometimes, but especially now. I'm so grateful and humbled and honored to be here with you all. And what I have is about 40 minutes, which is a long stretch of a moment, and I just want do what your body needs. If you're like, I need to go up and get another plate, I need to get some water, I need to stand up, I need to please feel free, which is such a beautiful expression. And it's in 13 parts. But first, I want to say some thank yous, and then I have 2 epigraphs in sound that we'll listen to. But words of deepest gratitude to Lucille Clifton, Fred Clifton, and to their children here and across time, whose marks and sounds shimmer in the air, wood, and brick of this house with such beauty and power. I was overwhelmed when I got here yesterday. You can feel it. It's okay, it's all okay. Deepest gratitude to your families whose making and visionary practices continue to make world and refuge for so many to dream, study, and live alongside, and love alongside. We are gathered here today and what you all continue to make. To Joelle for your exquisite and gorgeously rigorous and intuitive stewardship. To Janae and to all of you gathered here with our people, birds, and wayfinding in our bones and breaths on this 27th day of June 2024, to be in study together as we think about the work of mother, poet, visionary, Lucille Clifton, born Thelma Lucille Sayles on this day in 1936, in 2 epigraphs. Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
Yes, Lord, he was born with a withered arm. This is Lucy's child, Jeannie, my father's father. And when he was still just a baby, Lucy waited by the crossroad one night for Harvey Nichols to come to her. And when he rode up on a white horse, she cocked up a rifle she had stolen and shot him off his horse and killed him, Lou. And she didn't run away. She didn't run away. She waited right there by the body with the rifle in her hand till the horse, coming back empty saddled to the stable, brought a mob to see what had become of Harvey Nichols. And when they got to the crossroad, they found Lucy standing there with the rifle in her hand. And they didn't lynch her, Lou, because she was Mammy Caroline's child. They're from Dahomey women, that's what I believe. Mammy Caroline got one of the lawyer Sale family to defend her daughter because they was all lawyers and preachers in that family. They had a legal trial, and Lucy was found guilty and hanged. Mammy Caroline took the baby boy Jeannie and raised him and never let him forget who he was. I used to ask her sometime, Mammy, was you scared back then about Grandma Lucy? And she would look right at me and say, I'm scared for you, mister, that's all. She always called me mister. She said I was Mr. Sale, and Lou, I always was. Later, I would ask my father for proof. Where are the records, Daddy? I would ask. The time may not be right. It may just be a family legend or something. Somebody somewhere knows, he would say. And I would be dissatisfied and fuss with Fred, my husband, about fact and proof and history, until he told me one day not to worry, that even the lies are true. In history, even the lies are true. And there would be days when we young Sales would be trying to dance and sing in the house, and Sammy, my brother, would miss a step and not be able to keep up to the music, and neither one of us could ever learn how to dance, and he would look over in the corner of the room and holler, damn Harvey Nichols, and we would laugh.
And one more.
And he didn't realize that I was born with 12 fingers. I thought everybody knew that. People have asked me, what is that a metaphor for? And I hardly ever think about metaphor. And I tried to explain it's not a metaphor for anything. I was born with 12 fingers. And so this is a poem about that. I was born with 12 fingers, like my mother and my daughter. Each of us born wearing strange black gloves, extra baby fingers hanging over the sides of our cribs and dipping into the milk. Somebody was afraid we would learn to cast spells and our wonders were cut off, but they didn't understand the powerful memory of ghosts. Now we take what we want with invisible fingers, and we connect my dead mother, my live daughter, and me through our terrible
So coming around is a packet, and we're gonna dip in and out of it. We're not gonna look at all of the poems. I'm greedy, and it's very hard to choose which poems to look at, so I had like 20 like a couple weeks ago, and so this packet has more than what we're gonna look at. But I've titled this talk, which feels like formal notes. What else she sounds, notes on aesthetics of Lucille Clifton, and it'll be like anecdotal and some close reading. So one. I think it was the title that made me pull the Book of Light off that library shelf when I was in high school. I faced north as I read those first quivering lines, thus meeting Lucille Clifton, then pressed her poems into the book of my blood and began to learn how to feed myself with language. And though her voice, full of water and women and girls, is among the voices that has so utterly shaped my own seeing, I only spoke to her in person 3 short times. The first time I met Lucille Clifton was at our beloved Cave Canem retreat for Black poets over 2 decades ago, which is wild. She was to me an astonishment of warmth and blade-sharp keenness, how attuned she seemed to the intricacies of humanity and the experiences that shape us so. She visited our workshop with Toy Derricott and gave the sharpest feedback and asked the sharpest questions. They laughed a lot at the head of the table. I remember that someone cried, not because of the feedback, but because of the difficulty of what she was trying to carry in the poem. We all sat around that table quiet and a little stopped up, not knowing what to do. And Lucille Clifton said something like, "You better touch her. Somebody's crying, you have to touch her and comfort her, touch her." I think about that all the time in classrooms, whether it's about tears or other things, and I feel sometimes I rise, sometimes I don't rise to that advice. I think about it all the time. I have heard her shush a crowd at the 92nd Street Y, people laughing, and she was like, don't laugh, don't. Her clarity and matter-of-fact honesty both set her apart and made her seem emphatically human, though my inside eye could see she was full of stars. Everyone called her Miss Lucille that week. Later in the week, I was asked to introduce her at her reading, and the shutters of my body felt flung open, and my blood rushed hot with yes, but also how? How? What to say about this brilliant, mighty, magical woman? My ink ran blue across pages of handwritten notes and revisions. These years later, I do not recall everything I said that early evening, but what I am certain of saying is this: Lucille Clifton. What can I say? She is the Lucille Clifton of her generation. And she was tickled by that, which made me feel proud. But what did I mean? No one writes like Lucille Clifton, and yet if it were possible to open a voice like a suitcase to see what it carries inside it, I believe that inside the voices of many of our most beloved contemporary writers are the poems of Lucille Clifton. I've come to read Clifton, quote, aesthetically, to borrow from Kevin Quashie in his essay, Aliveness and Aesthetics. I should have had a bibliography, but I didn't do that. We can talk after. Attending to the aesthetics, this is a quote, attending to the aesthetics of the created thing, its shape and form, its poetics, its effects and affects rendered via language, end quote. And in this study, I've begun to sense the ways that the voice prints, aesthetics, and sensibilities of Clifton's ancestors shape and perhaps can be traced in her work. I am interested in the ways that the poems themselves make art and love. I emphasize aesthetics because to engage her work is to engage the art and intellectual, spiritual, and political possibilities this art continues to grow out of and to make. There is the ferocity of her clear sight, fiercely working to undo shame and shuttled into truth-telling and experience. There is the constellatory thinking where everything is kin. The verbs of one body might also be the verbs of another seemingly disparate or distant body. Her streetlights, for example, bloom. and all things have agency. As the speaker of August the 12th mourns a distant brother on his birthday, the speaker's hair cries too. Where did that go? Quote, my hair is crying for her brother. For her brother, not its brother, for her brother. Loss is embodied, plural, and ongoing. I think if the hair itself cries for her brother, I feel the hand too crying for her brother, and the eye, and the liver, and the heart, and the... In so few words, she drops us into deepest, most tender, and ongoing relation. This is a relation and sensibility that seems to me to grow out of such makers as her foremother, Caroline, and her father, and her own mother, Thelma, after whom she is named, one of her names. 2. Clifton's first book, Good Times, was published when her children were ages 7, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Sometimes I'm trying to write, I have 2 kids, and I'm like, oh, 7, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, what am I doing? I'll be under the table like, like. Her daughters, Sydney, Gillian, and Alexia, remember their mother's writing as part of their daily life. Quote, as children, we watched our mother type on her old-fashioned typewriter at the dining room table. For us, this is what mothers did, and where they did it. Create worlds, play games, and share meals in the same place. Her creating space was her sanctuary and ours. So it is with her every word, end quote. And as Clifton's daughters talk about the making practices of their mother, I can't help but think of Alice Walker writing about her foremother's gardens, and the garden too as a making practice of math, imagination, sustenance, beauty. I think of this as I walk among the trees. 3. Clifton begins her memoir Generations with 3 quotes, one from the Book of Job, one from her great-great-grandmother, the woman called Caroline Donald Sale, and one from Walt Whitman's Song of Myself. By beginning the memoir with these epigraphs, she puts 3 distinct voices in conversation, signaling her own poetics of attention and listening. 2, she establishes that what follows is indeed an epic. Like Job and Caroline and Whitman's eye, Clifton's epic is steeped in a belief that we all do carry in our roots and bones, and R-O-U-T-E-S, roots and bones, many epics. Her commitment to telling the stories of Black people, women, and men, the triumphs and failures of everyday life, health, and the unimaginable circumstance of captivity and moving freedom toward, joins generations' hands with the interdisciplinary and epic works of writers before, beside, and after her, writers like Zora Neale Hurston, Gwendolyn Brooks, Sonia Sanchez, Audre Lorde, Gloria Anzaldúa, Cherry Moraga, Nikki Finney, but also with the invisible work of other makers. For example, we might think of her father, born Samuel Sale, who loved books and, quote, could barely write more than his name, end quote, as a kind of epic poet. How, quote, he had changed his name to Sales instead of Sale after finding a part of a textbook in which the plural was explained. Clifton writes, quote, this is so moving to me. There will be more than one of me, my father thought, and he added the S to his name, end quote. Part of the particular epic site of Clifton's work is this ability to understand the beauty and enormity of human effort and what Toni Morrison calls the imaginative strategy. Such efforts and strategies, Samuel Sale's S among them, help us to distinguish the lives we make for ourselves from the lives others have imagined for us. This esteem for other people's work courses through all of Generations and her books of poems and picture books. It is in the photographic work behind the photos in her memoir, her mother's cake and scrapbooking practices, the doilies Miss Washington gives her before she goes off to college, and a letter her father writes to her when she is there. She writes, quote, my daddy wrote me a letter my first week there, and my daddy could only write his name. But he got this letter together and it said, Dear Lucille Man, I miss you so much, but you are there getting what we want you to have to be a good girl, signed your daddy. I cried and cried because it was the greatest letter I ever read or read about in my whole life. Mama wrote me too, and her letter said, "Your daddy has written you a letter, and he worked all day." In my dungeon-shook letter to my nephew on the 100th anniversary of emancipation, James Baldwin writes, "I have known both of you all your lives, have carried your daddy in my arms and on my shoulders, kissed and spanked him and watched him learn to walk. I don't know if you've known anybody that long. First as an infant, then as a child, then as a man. You gain a strange perspective on time and human pain and effort." End quote. I don't know where she got it, but from her first book to her last, Lucille Clifton's work pulses with that strange, powerfully full-hearted perspective that Baldwin writes about in his letter. Hers is an empathy swirled with intellect, courage, honesty, and brave, brilliant sight. 4. If you look in your packets, you'll find a page of excerpts from Generations. The first is the near end of a section about Lucille Clifton's foremother, Lucy, after whom she was named. It is a brutal story told clearly. So I think there's a tiny epigraph from Lucille Clifton when she was 10, and then on the back of that is the Generations section. Thank you. It is a brutal story told clearly, in quotes attributed to Clifton's father, but the part that I've excerpted for you here are Clifton's words. And I'm wondering if, because I'm going to be talking a lot, does somebody else feel able to read the first section? I think we have a mic coming. Yeah, we have a mic coming too. Thank you for saying yes. Yes, Maria. Oh, then you can do the second one. Okay, thank you. So Unique, if you could read just that first section, and then Maria the second two when it's time. Yes, please.
And Lucy was hanged. The lady whose name they gave me like a gift, had her neck pulled up by a rope until the neck broke, and I could see Mammy Caroline standing straight as a soldier in Green, Virginia, apart from the crowd of silent black folk and white folk, watching them, and not the wooden frame swinging her child. And their shame making distance between them and her a real thing. I know she made no sound, but her mind closed around the picture like a frame. And I know that her child made no sound, and I turn in my chair and arch my back and make this sound for my two mothers and for all that were named women. From section 6 of Lucy and Generations.
Thank you so much, Unique. So I just wanted to say a few words, and then I would love for Maria to read the last two sections. So because of the very fierceness of Lucy and of Mammy Caroline and the utter brutality of the scene, it would be understandable if we read her words with an attention to their sum and not the manner in which the words are written. But I think there's something very vital here in the details. Miss Lucille begins with the summary, and Lucy was hanged. And then she repeats or reiterates, and that's the thing about her work. I'm like, is that a repetition? Is that a reiteration? It's like, there's so much brilliance and attention, and it's hard to name. She repeats or reiterates, was hanged, but instead of placing the period after hanged again, she makes a comma and opens up the seam of that scene into a sentence that is a duration. I have some notes, but before that, does anything stand out to you about the sentence, those sentences? Any observation or tiny detail? Yeah, Taylor.
Just the end says it on going. It's elusive, like it's happening. In the moment of her life, because she's putting herself in that scene. Not only in the lineage, but also in but it's also in the scene of that. And I feel like the conjunction clues me into that ongoingness.
Thank you. Anybody else? We'll get you the mic so we can hear you.
So I wasn't able to like read the text or anything like that, but just being able to visualize what she said, that somebody else didn't know what happened. That's just so powerful.
I couldn't hear very well. Does somebody mind repeating that? Or can you say it louder?
Yeah, I said so. So I was listening and I was imagining the moment of the poem, the descriptive words that she used to describe the moment of the hanging. And what I heard at the end was that somebody else moaned for the person that was hung. And that is so powerful. That another human being will moan for the loss of another human being out loud in all that silence. That was very courageous.
I think it's interesting how she says the name is what it gave me like a gift.
Yes.
And then she goes on to paint the most horrific
Can you
scene
use the microphone? The
that
name.
you can imagine.
I'll repeat that, and then I'm going to move us along. But it, you said Sister Joy? Is that your name? The name that someone gave me like a gift, and then the scene goes on.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, it says that someone gave me this name like a gift, and then she goes on to paint the most horrific scene you can imagine. So that was just, the juxtaposition was incredible.
Let's have, I saw one more hand, Bernardo, and then we'll move on just because of time, but we can keep talking after.
To me, there's a word that flows throughout the whole thing. The word is being stiff. Was hanged, the lady whose name gave me, neck pulled up by a rope until the neck broke, speaks of stiffness. Then I see Mammy Kaline standing straight, which is stiff. As a soldier and apart from the crowd, is stiff. So there's like this like a spiritual stiffening thing, like exorcism kind of thing, where the whole energy is just straight up twisted.
And that's so striking. I had heard the part where Clifton says about herself, I know she made no sound, but her mind closed around the picture like a frame, and I know that her child made no sound. And I turn in my chair and arch my back and make the sound for my two mothers and for all the homie. I've always noticed the arching of the back when I hear the scene, but now that I hear the archness when you talk about that stiffness. Thank you. I want to say a couple of things. I want to say, is this the section where yes, black, the capital black. I want to say I'm hearing how she said black like that back then. So I'm hearing an echo of Lucille Clifton, her words about her father on page 240 of Good Woman. And she says about him, his speech, she said, he said black like that back then, real proud, and she capitalizes black. Which I hear that when I read, every time I read her black, I hear her father's black. I'm also thinking about how right after she says was hanged that second time, Clifton immediately looks at herself, the child, as Sister Joy said, and the lady whose name they gave me like a gift. So I'm thinking about, I know that this murder, I know that death is real and also outlived by Lucy's descendants. Her name goes on. Her death is one of the major events of the section, but so is the naming. The naming is also a major event. And also the reasoning, though not explicitly articulated here, maybe it is, but that I can't see, but another event is the reasoning behind the bestowal of the name. Lucy was someone to name a child after. I'm also interested in the different ways Lucy is referred to. In the sentence, she is Lucy, then the lady whose name they gave me, the lady, then her neck, the neck, then her child. This time the her's referring to Mammy Caroline, Lucy's mother. All in this one sentence are perspectival, relational ways of thinking about Lucy, someone who was and remains in relation to so many. I'm thinking about how Mammy Caroline is watching the crowd of silent Black folk and white folk. She is not watching the wooden frame, and yet the sentence is alive with the presence of Lucy, 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 Lucy. 2, there's the past tense of was hanged, and that moment when Clifton flashes back into the present tense. She says, I can see Mammy Caroline. There's this temporal shift that moves us into a more complex time until we go back into the past. I know she made no sound, and then back into the present, and I turn in my chair, ... I'm thinking about a tidal motion. Kamal Brathwaite, a poet who I love, writes about tidalectics, an analytical method based on what he says, quote, is the movement of the water backwards and forwards as a kind of cyclic motion rather than linear, end quote. Perhaps the next quote from Thelma, which I would love Maria to read, gives us insight into this idea of that motion. Does somebody have the mic? Does someone have the mic? Ah, yeah. Thank you, Joanne. It's Maria. And if, yeah, both sections.
Things don't fall apart. Things hold. Lines connect in thin ways that last and last and lives. And lives become generations made out of pictures and words just kept from Thelma and generations in the north. And I could tell you about things we've been through, some awful ones, some wonderful. But I know that the things that make us more than that, our lives are more than the days in them. Our lives are our line, and we go on. I type that, and I swear I can see Katie standing in the green of Virginia, in the green of Africa. And I swear she makes no sound, but she nods her head and smiles. The generations of Caroline Donald, born in Africa in 1823, and Sam Lois Sale, born in America in 1777, are Lucille, who had a son named Jeannie, who had a son named Samuel, who married Thelma Moore, and the blood became magic. And their daughter is Thelma Lucille, who married Fred Clinton, and the blood became whole, and their children are Sydney, Frederica, Gillian, Alexia, 4 daughters, and Channing, Graham, 2 sons, and the line goes on. Don't you worry, mister, don't worry.
Thank you for that reading. And I think that I mistyped is. I think it's not a capital, but we can check. So I wanted to look at that moment when Clifton refers to her method. I typed that, she writes, and it seems as if the typing, the act, the thought, the mark may be part of what enables her to reach the frequency of sight she describes, maybe. I also hear the echo of the first paragraph we read together in which she describes Mammy Caroline standing straight as a soldier in green Virginia. But here the greennesses are at least 2, Virginia and Africa. In that greenness is the reunion that was always there. Again, she refers to the soundlessness of this foremother, and then as if a version of the earlier sound Clifton makes for her 2 mothers and for all Dahomey women, the sound that is a scream up top. She writes the lives across the lines. And I'm wondering, like, what are those spaces? Like, what could those spaces be? And this is like a question that I offer up, like, as something to wonder about, as I ask, I love that that's a question. Like, what are those spaces? Could they be almost children that she writes about? Could they be something else? And I also wanted to share, where did that go? Earlier in the memoir, Mammy Caroline says, to Clifton's father, she's talking about her name. And Clifton's father's remembering they called her K-line, Daddy would tell us. What her African name was, I never heard her say. I asked her one time to tell me, and she just shook her head. But it'll be forgot, I hollered at her. It'll be forgot. She just smiled at me and said, don't you worry, mister. Don't you worry. And to hear, don't you worry, mister, don't you worry, after these names and the line goes on, like it feels like a futurity and a past of like, don't you worry. Like the name is not said here. And I'm saying, Dion Brand in her book Notes, oh gosh, what's the title? Notes on Belonging? There's this section of this brilliant, beautiful book where she's asking her uncle, like she's begging him to give information about their family and who they descended from in Africa. And she spends all this time and she doesn't come to the answer, but it's like the seeking and the response to the seeking that holds hands here with Lucille Clifton to me. The light of her African name refracting through all the lines, all the generations, and the line goes on. I'm thinking that the life force, knowing, and cosmology of Clifton's great-great-great-grandmother, for example, floods Lucille Clifton's aesthetics with the shiftful, indomitable black light, and a light that also carries privacy. Not all can be known. 5. A few years ago, in the thick of family struggle, a stranger gifted me with an old article about Lucille Clifton, in which appears a photograph of her and her children. It's the photograph that hangs beside the door of this house today. It is a photograph whose sounds I can almost hear. The children, the sound of feet on the stairs, maybe the birds, maybe the camera shutters click. For several months, as I learned to raise my young son and my body morphed with my second pregnancy, I worked with that photograph on my desk, drawing strength from Clifton's fortitude and path. In the photograph, she sits, what feels to me mightily, on the steps of her home. There's something so sensual about it too, to me, just like you can kind of like feel the suppleness of skin. She sits in the near center of the frame, I think barefoot. It looks like it, or at least her heels are bare. Beautiful, a light, a mountain. Here also sing the generations before and after. Caroline, Sam, Lucille, Jeannie, Samuel and Thelma. Here sing Fred and Sydney, and Frederica and Gillian, and Alexia and Channing and Graham. And the line goes on. Here sing the poems still being written, going on and on as days, grandchildren, star apple, the shapes of clouds, and the line goes on. 6. A line is lineage, but a line is also a unit of language in a poem, as each of us are, units of language in a long, long poem. 7. Clifton's lines so often sing with the music of the ladder, utterance after rung of utterance, each line its own clear place, often progressing measuredly and assuredly down to the next phrase. In her foreword to the collected, Toni Morrison writes of Clifton's work, quote, seductive with the simplicity of an atom, which is to say highly complex, explosive underneath an apparent quietude, end quote. Each line is a whole feeling, part of a whole, is a whole feeling, part of a whole. A whole feeling, whole hyphen feeling, part of a whole. Seemingly straightforward, the more I look, the more their strangeness startles me as she writes it, light flaring behind what has been called the world. If we could look at, we're gonna move to hands. Is that the next one in your packet? Yeah. Yes. And if somebody, could we get 2 reads of the poem? 2 different people? Thank you. You can read it, and then we'll see somebody else. And however you feel to read it, if you want to take a risk, go for it. Did you think I pointed to you? Oh, no.
Hands. The snips of fingers fell from the sterile bowl into my mind. And after that, whatever I was taught, they would point toward a different learning, which I followed.
I could no more ignore the totems of my tribe than I could close my eyes against the light flaring behind what has been called the world. Look, hold these regulated hands against the sky. See how they were born to more than bone. See how their shadow steadies where I remain, whole, alive, 12-fingered.
Thank you. And one more person, can we get somebody to read the same poem just to hear it twice? Oh yes, I think analysis. Analysis.
The sticks of fingers fell from the sterile hole into my mind, and after that, whatever I was taught, they would point toward a different way, which I followed. I could no more ignore the totems of my tribe than I could close my eyes against the light flaring behind what has been called the world. Look, hold these regulated hands against the sky. See how they were born to more than bone. See how their shadow steadies what I remain. Whole, alive, well-fingered.
Beautiful. Thank you both. Thank you. Clifton writes a poem in which she is thinking about, I don't know if you can hear people up here saying, wow, wow, just so you know, because I don't know. Clifton writes a poem in which she is thinking about, among other things, the history of her hands. Born with 12 fingers, 2 of which were removed when she was young, she has written several poems which talk about or allude to the powers of these hands. I want to observe a few things about this poem. See how that 4th line of the last stanza, 1, 2, then bones, see how their shadow, to me carries so much psychic and lyric intelligence unto itself. Then bone, see how their shadow. I mean, that's the thing about her poems. It's like so many people live with them, and there are lines like, I'll be on, I've been on the train or out walking or with the kids, and it'll just be like a flash of a line and then I'm like, oh, look at that line. Like Cornelius Eady talked, the genius of her genius, the genius of this person. Then bone, see how their shadow. Though then bone is part of a syntactical unit from the line before. To read that line again and again is to syntactically experience that something is missing, strange. I feel the line reaching back for the more it once belonged to. And then the words, see how their shadow, come as a kind of sonic shadow, a sonic elongation of or elaboration on the bones we are commanded to see. And the spaces between look and hold, bone and see, remain and whole, begin to feel like the light there flaring, wisdom shadow, the more than what has been called the world. Like most of her other poems, this poem can fit inside of the outline of my hand. So I am thinking of the poem also as something to hold in your hand, but also as a handmade thing, typed or handwritten, but also something witchy, attuned, and attuning. In this poem, the snips of finger fall from the sterile bowl into the poet's mind. They touch her sight and point toward a different learning. Their wisdom or witchiness is a compass pointing her toward the totems of her tribe. I notice that each stanza is 6 lines, each line perhaps a finger. I notice the first line is 5 syllables, the snips of finger, marking perhaps a regulated hand, but the second line is 6, perhaps marking the original version of the hand, unregulated, present, shadow, original. I notice that in the second stanza, in which she is writing about the persistence of the light flaring behind what has been called the world, she is working with 6-syllable lines, except for the last line, the world. Perhaps this effect shows an accumulation of wisdom and light in the background of the foregrounded words, the world, whose insufficiency for describing the world and its mysteries is emphasized by the shortness of the line up against all else. When she asks us, look, hold these regulated hands against the sky, instinctively and without her own hands with me here, I hold the paper or the book up to the light. Again, the spaces between stanzas and between words in this last stanza feel like the shadow, the more than bone, pushing through. Her fingers fall from the sterile bowl into my mind, our minds. She pushes us to bend our sight toward what else is, quote, as she says in another poem, the presence among us of the unfenced is. 8. Actually, can we have one person read? We're going to skip light, which if you don't know, you will see. But I'm wondering if we can just get one read of February 13th, 1980.
February 13th, 1980. 21 years of my life you have been the lost color in my eye, my secret blindness. All my seeings turn gray with your going. Mother, I have worn your name like a shield. It is torn but protected me all these years. Now, even your absence comes of age. I put on a dress called woman for this day, but I am not grown away from you, whatever I say.
On February 13th, 1959, Thelma Sale's mother to Lucille Clifton became an ancestor. She was 44, Lucille Clifton was 22. Miss Lucille would go on to live and live and live and live and live. She became an ancestor on February 13th, 2010. I often think about these dates, this date between them, this date which looms so large, which she carried and carried. And there are so many ways these two women carried and carry one another still. Lucille Clifton was named after her mother, her birth name, in fact, Thelma Lucille Sales. They were both poets, though the mother to Lucille threw her poems into fire, and Lucille Clifton went on to be a cherished and widely read poet. They were both poets. And Lucille Clifton would go on to measure her time alive on earth alongside her mother's time in the poems, making poems that marked her living longer than her mother did. As we see in this poem, her mother's absence, her death, is a bodied nothingness, which is interesting because also in Generations, she talks about the nothingness of her father's amputated leg in the casket. And it's like the way that she talks about nothing as something that is nothing, it's astounding. A loss that comes of age is now 21. In this brilliant, precise, and complex poem, Clifton makes a prism that can fit inside a poem again. And through this prism shines, ricochets the light of Lucille, of Thelma, of Lucille's loss of Thelma, and of Thelma's absence growing older. Such subjects seem to me twinned or kin. But I'm also thinking about, I'm going to skip around here, I'm also thinking about one of the things that is so mysterious to me about this poem is in her work, like there's so much rhyme in this poem. And it was funny because I didn't notice, I noticed like 2 rhymes in the beginning and then I was like, what is that rhyme? And then it was like 3 rhymes, 4, and I was like, for her work, there's so much more rhyme than I'm used to in other poems of hers. And so there's like day, away, say, gray, age, name. And I thought, what is that rhyme doing? How does it mean? To me, rhyme is repetition and change, alteration. It is one of the ways I'm made aware of history being carried in the poem, the history of a particular sound, day, away, say. It is a way of being Janus or two-headed, moving forward while looking back, carrying maybe the principle of Sankofa. In the context of the poem, the rhyme to me feels like it's pushing us farther out, away from the epicenter of loss, the day, the original February 13th, but it also insists on returning or trying to return. Bells resounding, resounding, but changed, insisting on not being grown away from the mother, but also by their nature, the sonic evolution, carrying, uncarrying, that is rhyme, are necessarily grown away. The rhyme may be an embodiment of time's pressure on a sound or a life, how it carries and uncarries its beginning, its mother sound. And then I'm also thinking of like, this is hard to, I wrote it out, but it gets so dense, so I'm just gonna try to say, like name, shield, dress. I think of like certain verbs that go with name, like you can call a name, you can wear a dress. I mean, you could do other things, right? But here it's, I have worn the name. It's not I've worn the dress, I've worn your name like a shield. I think of a dress as something that could be torn, or a cloth that could be torn, but I don't think of shields as being torn, which is just my imagination. But it has torn, but protected me all these years. So the name that is like a shield has torn, and I wore the name. I put on a dress called woman. Like in so much of her work, in all different ways, in ways that are her own, like I begin to see constellations of ideas. And I love in the piece of sound that we heard her reading from, the poem that we heard her reading from before that, she says, I hardly think of metaphor. And I feel like that's so, yes, this is like cosmology. This isn't metaphor. This is like everything is connected. Everything touches each other, shines on each other with the attributes of each other. Like it is everywhere in her work. And what if I lived like that? You know? What if we lived like that? Everything is in relation. And so I was thinking, just a 2-minute experiment. If you can think of some potent objects, things, details. It might be like a button from a shirt you had, or I'm thinking about my mother's braid that I found in her top drawer. Like she, I guess, had cut it off and kept it. Like a potent thing from your life. Actually, like 2 potent things, if you can hold them or jot them down. And imagine the words, the verbs that you associate with those things. So I might think a braid is cut or braided or oiled. So verbs that you associate with those things. And just take a minute. You don't have to write. We'll just take a minute quietly. And now, maybe this is something, if you're interested, and it feels like we're moving too fast, you could keep doing it another time. But if you then let those verbs that you attribute to one or that you associate with one touch your logic when you think of the other in a way that is meaningful and true, right? We could play all day and I could say da 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 da. My mother's hair was jumping, but that doesn't mean anything to me yet. But what are the things that might surprise you that are meaningful and true, that are through the needle of the other thing? I'm gonna move on. 10. The words are few. The lines and syntactical formations flicker with spareness and complexity. In this way, the poems trace life and make possible a frequency that is alive and shiftful. Anniversary, for example, flickers with the traces of other formulations in other poems. And so this is the last one we'll look at. We won't look at To Joan, which is another brilliant poem. But I wonder if we can get one more person to read Anniversary. Great, thank you. Thank you.
Anniversary, 5774. 16 years, by the white of my hair, by my wide bones, by the light that ran out of me into life. 16 years, and the girl is gone, with her 2 good eyes. She was always hoping something. She was afraid of everything. Little is left of her who behind bread and babies. Only something thin and bright and plain. It has no language it can speak without burning. It has no other house around it. It loves you, loves me, loves me.
Thank you. By the life that ran out of me into life, pulses with another of her poems that's actually in the packet that begins, but you don't have to look for it. Light on my mother's tongue breaks through her soft, extravagant hip into life. In ways similar to the ways she writes about her mother, here Clifton writes herself. In this poem, which I read as an anniversary poem, although I don't know, but I read it as an anniversary poem to her beloved husband, Fred Clifton, father, artist, scholar, philosopher, who they are artists who have made this space that we feel. So it's this Poems of Her Beloved. It is also partially a self-portrait that begins in first person but moves into a kind of third-person elegy of the girl she was, who is now gone, and then moves back into trying to describe what is left of this girl and this being who is now herself. She writes of this element, little is left of her who hid behind bread and babies, only something thin and bright as a flame. It has no language it can speak without burning. This burning, this thin and flame-like brightness conjures to me fire, conjures desire, conjures death, conjures light. Light which she ever is and for whom and which she was named. The it which I read to be the elemental filament of herself, her spirit, plural and ever-traveling self in this poem runs to the you, the beloved to whom the poem is addressed in the poem's last line, made resolute by its emphatic rhyme. It's almost as if like that running to you is happening, but I didn't realize because you is at the end. Made resolute by its emphatic rhyme, it has no other house to run to. It loves you, loves you, loves you. Making this anniversary poem a poem that announces to the beloved its love. But the reason I wanted to bring this into the room today is because of the house. It is striking to think that the house feels like the catalyst of the rupture or repetition when the speaker addresses the you explicitly for the first time. In these last lines, we see the sacredness of what a house is in this poem. The only refuge of its kind, the house perhaps, husband, family, home, this home perhaps. The house here in this world, which is distinct from other houses in other of her poems, is the structure within which the speaker, however little of her she says is left in the poem, is possible. Indeed, it is the place where she can be and be and be. 11. My face to the window and the flowers rocking the baby in the candle's light during the godly hour, I am seeing the beloved student's moon-bright face shining with tears as I recite, won't you celebrate with me what I have shaped into a kind of life? And she recites the words with me too under her breath. Now I am in the kitchen with my beautiful father, who is often bewildered by poems. He is holding a bookmark of Blessing the Books and studying it, asking if I can unpack it with him line by line. This poem is a table at which we sit and meet even now, though there are miles and years and his death between us now. Now look, The children are repeating, we will wear new bones again, and other people think they know how long life is, how strong life is. We know. In a room in Harlem below which Langston Hughes' ashes rest, and maybe these children chanting poems are part of his dream, her dream. Now I'm laughing on the phone with Aisha, who says, remember that time when we all went to hear Miss Lucille's craft talk, and I forget who it was, someone asked Miss Lucille about her cane and said how beautiful it was, and did she get it in Africa, maybe Kenya, and Miss Lucille said, oh no, I got this at TJ Maxx. And we all howled. 12. Now I am hearing her. Harriet, if I be you, let me not forget to be the pistol pointed, to be the mad woman at the river's edge, warning, be free or die. And Isabel, if I be you, let me in my sojourning not forget to ask my brothers, ain't I a woman too? And grandmother, if I be you, let me not forget to work hard, trust the gods, love my children, and wait. 13. Miss Lucille, brilliant black magic, is sayer, light, listening to tree talk and water words, conversing with the dead and the yet to be conceived, dreaming of foxes. If we be you too, like you be Harriet and Isabel and your grandmother, let us gather our all selves up into our common arms, tender to the flowers we are and unashamed. Let that which is double-sided, 12-fingered, and strange deepen our listening. Let our breaths follow yours, quote, I met myself this morning coming in, and all day I have been a black bell ringing. I survive, 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 end quote. Let us help each other to see that we are such bells, resonating even now with abiding, unabiding sound, turning that sound into a path towards something spacious, miraculous, nourished by your brilliant black light. Thank you.
Thank you. Stay close, stay close. She said so much, and I don't want to trivialize that in any way, but to say thank you for your eye and your ear and your ways of knowing that transcend both those senses. This was a gift, and so I just appreciate you. One, I recognize that you all have been sitting in a room that's probably warm. I want to sort of engage in a Q&A, but I'm thinking maybe the chance of maybe 1 or 2 questions at most. And then what I offer is that through the book signing, through sort of us eating in this home, that we can sort of engage in smaller conversations with aracelis, because she'll be here. This is what this home is meant to be. So just want to say, if there's any questions, 1 or 2, that we would like to sort of discuss publicly, like this is the moment. And if not, we'll sort of transition, but want to open up the floor for any questions that there may be for aracelis. Any? And it's okay if you're shy. I know it's been long. So if there's a way of sort of holding it in, it's okay. Yeah.
I'm kind of curious about magic and how I feel like it's been so downplayed, so trivialized, so thrown out as just spooky nothingness. And I have a 3-year-old daughter who, like, I am certain is aware of it. It's like she knows it's there, and I am only starting to see it again. And I'm just wondering if we could maybe just say some words about magic and how it shows up in our lives and what, you know, what it looks like.
What are y'all?
I know. Do you want to say? Do you have something? Yeah. Well, I don't know what to say. I mean, I love what you say about your 3-year-old. I don't know what to say except I don't know. Does anyone know what to say? Do you know what to say?
It's real in the
It's
back.
real. Somebody said it's real.
There you go.
I know that I was falling asleep when I was working on when I was reading this for the selected, and I have a daughter who was maybe 1 at the time, and she was touching my hands, and she was supposed to be asleep, but I was also falling asleep, And I was thinking and listening toward Lucille Clifton for so long, and her hands, and like I could feel that my daughter was communicating something to me with her hands, and I was like, oh, I don't have words. It's beyond language, but you're teaching me something about Lucille Clifton's hands and poems. And that night I went to sleep and woke up. This is in the forward to the selected. And I heard Lucille Clifton's voice so clearly when I was waking up from this dream. And she was talking about, like, when you dream, you stay a quarter open. It was so clear. And also it was her. I was like, we don't know each other that well. But I know that's you. Does anyone else want to say?
Kim, you had something you were
I just wanted to say that my aunt always talked about magic. She talked about having magic hips. She always taught about being special. She was different. And so is my Uncle Fred. They were both special people but different. And she would always talk about the magic.
Last question before we transition.
I just want to know more about Lucille Clifton House in terms of what it's going to do.
I'm like, this question's for me. One, I think so many things are coming for the Clifton House. I joined in January, and so hit the ground running, and so it's been 5-6 months. So more programs, I think, to sort of invest in the sort of like nourishment of artists, and so there'll be residencies at some point. I know all of you haven't necessarily toured the home. We'll do that after as well. For everyone wants to sort of see the home, I'm around to sort of walk you through. Alexia and Gillian will also be here to walk you through in case I'm tied up. But to say that residencies, exhibitions, workshops, we're hoping to do publishing at some point. I mean, there's so much that's coming. And yeah, I think stay tuned. But I think it's really sort of about how do we nurture artists, right? How do we create a sanctuary? So there's a lot more. There will be sort of open, now we can't say open hours, studio hours to do work. Say it one more time. How do artists nurture the community? Yeah, I think that's an important part. So we, it feels important that we sort of create opportunities for Windsor Hills, particularly, and Baltimore at large. And so we're partnering with sort of Windsor Hills to make sure that we have art programs for young people in the community to bring sort of artists in here to be in conversation with them. I think we're sort of creating opportunities for artists to sort of create work in the home, right? And so with the residency, it's sort of, there's going to be funding for it. We're after funding so they can be paid when they come here. So it's not just they have to pay to come. It'll be all expenses paid. And so again, and it's still developing truly, right? And so it feels important to me often to think about what does a community need, and they tell us what that is too, and that informs some of the programming. So it's all in development. I wish that I could sort of have, I think that's the vision for now, and sort of more, and to grow, right? That's sort of the beginning, that's the seed, and there'll be more to come. So I hope that satiates a little bit. I think I'll sort of pivot there, but I do want to do one thing before I go. Janae, are you nearby? Can you peep your head out? Can you come to like the center, people can watch you? For those who don't know, the Clifton House, there is, for 4 months it was me alone with Sydney Clifton's help in Los Angeles. And then for the last 2 months, has it been 2, 3? Janae has come on board and has been a tremendous help. What you see this evening is a huge part of her heart and her dedication. And while I'm not from Baltimore, she is, and so holds me down, right? And so it's just an honor and a gift to sort of work alongside you. So thank you. Okay, that said, there are books for sale. Please buy them. Help me out. Okay, buy them. Get them signed by the. There's food. Eat it. Please help me out. And lastly, thank you to the Clifton family for being here. I adore you all. Thank you to the Buffalo family for coming. I adore you. And also, thank all of you for being here. It's a tight room, but I appreciate your endurance. I love y'all. And to my dear aracelis, thank you for this. It was more than I imagined. So thank you. We'll be around. Take care.